And today's distinguished speaker is Dr. Naveen Nishchal, who is an associate professor at Indian Institute of Technology, Patna. Dr. Nishchal received his PhD degree in physics from IIT Delhi in 2005. And he has served Instruments Research and Development Establishment under Defense Research Development Organization, DRDO, Dehradun as a scientist C during the period 2004 to 2007. He served IIT Guwahati as assistant professor during 2007-2008. His research interest includes digital holography, optical cryptography, correlation-based optical path recognition, fractional Fourier transformation. He has been awarded as India's topmost cited author award in 2019 and also made to the list of top 2% scientists of the world study conducted by Stanford, USA. And many congratulations, a very big congratulations to Dr. Nishchal for achieving that. He is connected to different journals as editors and reviewers. At present, he has 2 PhD students enrolled under him, while 6 have already completed their PhD. So I welcome you, Dr. Nishchal, and you may start your talk now. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. सब लोगों को मेरा नमस्कार. First of all, I wish to acknowledge and thank Professor Seema Sharma for giving me an opportunity to interact with the young faculty members or the faculty members across the country in this program. I must acknowledge the efforts of the AN College and all the team members who are involved in this activity, because it takes lots of effort in actually realizing such things. Though we are meeting offline, online, we could have met offline, but due to other restrictions, we have not met offline. Anyway, so we have to, this COVID says us that we have to proceed as in all circumstances. So today I have chosen to talk to you on a topic which is close to my research area. The topic is photorefractive optics. This topic, photorefractive optics, that the whole concept of this theme of this event is on the novel materials. So I was asked to talk on the material aspect. When I was deciding the topic, I was thinking that what topic I should speak, because I work purely on classical optics. But I think without optics and without materials, nothing is possible in this world. If we are able to talk to you, it is because of the basic principles of the optics, because we are connected through fiber optic cables. We are able to see each other through the cameras, again connected through fiber optic cables. And the basic concept of this connectivity is the total internal reflection, what we study in class 2 level or class 10 level. That total internal reflection is the effect through which we send the information we send the light into the fiber cables, and then the information is carried away from one point to another point, anywhere in the world. So the credit goes to optics, but when you are making fiber cables, it is the materials which protect your, which carries your information. So they are basically embedded to each other. We cannot separate them. In material science or in any materials study, optics plays a very significant role. Like if you are making any material, then you wish to characterize that material. We need to see them. For that purpose, we have X-ray diffraction patterns. We have X-ray exciting machines available with us that tells us about the structural property of the material. So what is this X-ray diffraction? This is based on purely the concept of diffraction. which falls under the domain of optics. We use various types of microscope to see things. The moment we go to the very minute level, minute domain, then we have to move from the optical microscope to electron microscope. But again, the concept of optics has to be used to see those finer details. So we cannot separate them, and they are all connected. And when we do research, we find that all aspects and all subjects are merged together. We talk of electronics, but when you make a device, we have many things embedded, many things combined. We are talking today through this internet connection. We are having a laptop connection. We are having desktop connection. In desktop, in laptops, we use a material. There's the screen, the display, what we use in our these devices. This is purely material. And that material, what we call as the liquid crystals. So it is, the displays are basically liquid crystal displays. So when we say liquid crystal, it has both the properties. It has the property of a liquid as well as the property of a crystal, because it has the crystalline nature. So it has the crystalline property. And it takes any shape, so it has the property of a liquid. So this is screen, which helps us to interact each other. We are able to see each other. The display system, it is purely a material aspect. These days, we go to the market and buy television sets. Now, old days, tubes are replaced. We all buy LCDs, and nowadays we buy LEDs. LED TV we purchase. What is LED TV? It is again an LCD TV, liquid crystal display module. It has LED light is embedded into it. So you have the materials, you have the optics. It is so narrowly combined to each other, you cannot separate them. You have to study everything. Whenever you are going to propose new thing, new item, new product, new design, you have to have the knowledge of everything. Anyway, coming back to the topic which I chose to speak today, it is the photorefractive optics. So what do we mean by the term photorefractive optics? So first of all, we would like to know that what it is, why we should study more on photorefractive optics or photorefractives. So photorefractive optics is a rapidly growing, fascinating technology in modern optics, which offers a myriad of potential applications such as high capacity optical memories, dynamic hologram formations, massive interconnections, high speed tunable filters, true time delay lines for phase array antenna processing. It has many applications. And these are the motives. This brings us to motivate us to study more on this material. So what are the outline which I'm going to discuss today? We will first discuss about the motivation of this photorefractive material, because it involves nonlinear effects. So we have to discuss something on the nonlinear optics part, on nonlinear effects. Then what is photorefractive effect, that we will study. And then I will talk about some of the applications of these photorefractive crystals. And we will conclude with that. So coming to the first part as the motivation. I hope I am audible to all the audience and you are able to see my slides.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good, wonderful. So what is the motivation for studying photorefractive crystals? Electro-optic material. When we say electro-optic material, we have the change in refractive index. As you know, that refractive index is a basic parameter of the material. So there will be change in the refractive index, and that change happens due to the application of electric field. When you apply electric field, the refractive index of the material is changing. Such material we call as the electro-optic material. Why we say electro-optic? It is the electrical field which is applied on the material that changes the optical property. That is why we call it as electro-optical. there are two terms we often encounter in technical terms. One we call as the electro-optic effect, and another one is the optoelectronic effect. Many of you must have encountered these two terminologies, electro-optic effect or optoelectronic effect. And the difference is in the nomenclature. When we say electro-optic, means optical parameters or optical properties are changed due to the application of electric field, then we call it as the electro-optic effect. And when in another case, when we call it as the optoelectronic effect, it means optics changes the effect, plays an important role in changing the properties of the electrical properties. So we have the optoelectronic. Like this LCD device, what we have, this display, these are optoelectronic materials. And laser is an electro-optic device. Similarly, this change in refractive index is an electro-optic effect. Then this material, photorefractive crystal, is also photosensitive material. What does it mean by the photosensitive material? Means it changes, there will be generation of electrons. Electrons are generated due to this photosensitive effect. Photosensitive means photo plus sensitive, there will be some changes in its properties due to the impact of photo. Photo means light. It is photoconductive material also. When we say photoconductive, means it has the ability to conduct the photoelectrons. So the moment we say photoconductivity, it means it has the electrons and holes conductivity. So this is one of the motivations of this one. It has high resolution imaging. High resolution imaging is possible through photorefractive effect. We have photorefractive microscope based on photorefractive crystals. Light propagation in photorefractive materials like BaTiO3, barium titanate. It has the property of this photorefractive impact. It is used as a photorefractive mirror also. Then non-aberration imaging. If you do an imaging through a lens always introduces some kind of aberrations. So you have to make the imaging system as aberration free. Fortunately, the imaging through this photorefractive crystal or photorefractive effect, it is non-imaging. It gives you non-aberration imaging. So that is one of the important feature. And it has the property of this dispersion cancellation. Usually in dispersion, we know that different wavelengths travel with different speed. So that gives you the dispersion. When you use a prism and when you use a white light, you see all the 7 colors. It is because of the dispersion. So this dispersion effect is also cancelled if you use a photorefractive effect. It has stimulated back scattering. These are another features. So these are the motivations, and these are the points which attract someone to study more on photorefractive effect or photorefractive crystals. There are many crystals nowadays. There are many polymers which have these properties of the photorefractivity. So those polymers are cheaper and it has many other features. So it has become a very good alternative for many purposes, for many applications. So as I mentioned that we need to talk about the nonlinear optics or nonlinear effect, because this photorefractive effect combines, it is because of this nonlinear effect. So these materials are nonlinear when they exhibit higher order susceptibility. Study of nonlinear optics is concerned with the effects that light itself induces as it propagates through a medium. Invention of laser permitted new ways of investigating optical properties of materials. Why they introduced different ways? Because laser light, as we know, that it has very high intense beam, power density is very high for a laser. So when power density is very high, the material doesn't work in the same way if you are using an ordinary light beam. So if you are using a high power density light beam, then the behavior of the material is changing. That give rise to second harmonic generation, third harmonic generation, self-focusing, and so on. We will talk more on this aspect. So in nonlinear optics, nonlinear region, what happens? In linear region, nothing happens because you illuminate the material with a light beam and you get the usual process done. But the moment you use a high power laser beam, there will be changes which is not linear. That the behavior becomes non-linear. It happens that in the linear region, this electric field is much shorter, much less than the intraatomic field. So in that case, N, which is the refractive index of that material, is independent of light intensity. It is not depending upon the light intensity. It is independent. You keep on enhancing the light beam, it doesn't change in the linear region. But the moment you move to the non-linear region, what happens that when this electric field, what you are applying, is comparable to the intraatomic field, then what happens that the refractive index depends on the light intensity. Means there is change in the refractive index, and that change you can control through the application of the light field. And this is what happens in the photorefractive effect. As the name suggests, it is photorefractive effect. Means photo means light. The moment you illuminate this material with light, the refractive index is going to change. It changes, the refractive index is modulated, it changed. That is why we call it as the photorefractive effect. And this will happen when it is in the nonlinear region. Means the electric field what you are applying, it is of the order of the intraatomic field. So, and depends on the light intensity, and due to that impact, the electron distribution within that material is modified, and that gives rise to many types of features. And this is what we basically explore when we talk of the different applications of the photorefractive crystal, photorefractive effect. So nonlinear optics is nothing but the study of the light in matter. We can control the refractive index of the light of the material by light itself, or manipulate one beam with another. This is what we study in the nonlinear optics. So nonlinear optics, we basically study about the effect of light or interaction of light with matter, how it is going to interact. As I said, it is in the, if it is in the linear region, that you don't see any extra thing. But the moment it is in the nonlinear region, with the intensity, the refractive index is changed, properties are changed. But this change, will it be permanent? No, that the impact is the moment you apply the light, it has the change in refractive index, you remove the light, the change is not there. It is like elastic properties. The moment you put force, you see that if you take a elastic material, you can expand it, leave the force, it takes its own shape. Same thing happens here also. But there are techniques we can fix that change in the refractive index. And how that can be changed, that gives rise to different applications. So how material responses to light beam? This is important to know. So material responses, it happens in the normal case that if you take this electrical polarization vector P, is assumed to be linearly proportional to electric field E of an applied optical wave. So P is your epsilon naught chi E in this linear medium, and naught is the constant independent of beam intensity for a given wavelength of the light. But when an intense laser beam interacts, as I mentioned in the beginning, that there will be change in the refractive index. So this is how the polarization changes. that the new effects arise that can be explained if linear term P can be replaced in a power series. So you have these terms. Now these terms give rise to different things. Here, this epsilon naught is the dielectric constant. Dielectric constant, then you have the electric field. So the first term is the linear term. Second term, as you know, when the electric the field is higher, the field is further higher. Those terms give rise to different effects. So what are those effects? So what are those effects? In linear optics, this is related to n square is equal to 1 plus chi. So the second order term, what you see where you are writing E square or EE, it is the frequency doubling where you have this sum or difference generation. Third term, when E is the power of Q, this will give rise to the third harmonic generation. And here you have the Raman and Brillouin scattering, self-focusing phenomena, phase conjugation. Everything you will see, and that happens due to this effect. So when you are enhancing more and more electric field, then it is going to happen. So consider an optical beam with a frequency omega and a DC field. This you can express by this expression. So the second term, it gives rise to a term called linear electro-optic effect. And this electro-optic effect was discovered by Pockels. So this is also called as Pockels effect. This was invented in 1883. This is done through modifying N refractive index with a DC field. It has applications in optical switching. This is one of the applications of this effect. So then we have static voltage appears when you have a E square term across the sample. Then you have this E square quadratic electro-optic effect. So this term we call as the Kerr effect. So when you have the E square term, EQ term, what I wrote here, then this gives rise to Pockels effect, and another one gives rise to, when you have a term, then it gives rise to Kerr effect. So it is quadratic electro-optic effect. Both are electro-optic effect, but this is quadratic. We call it as the DC Kerr effect. Or in other case, we call it as the optical or AC Kerr effect also. So refractive index is associated with a given position R, which depends on the optical field strength. This is a well-known expression. Refractive index at a position is nothing but N0 plus N2 IR. Now N2 is the refractive index in the limit of a small intensity. When you enhance the intensity, the IR is the local intensity, and N2 is the constant of material. So what we see, you keep on enhancing the electric field, the optical field or electric field, you will see the change in refractive index. And this is what it gives rise to photorefractive effect. So change of the local index of refraction or the refractive index by illumination of a beam with a spatial variation of intensity. So what happens that the moment you shine the light beam, there will be change in the refractive index. That change in refractive index is because of this electro-optic effect. It was first discovered in 1966, study of laser beams through electro-optic crystals, because in 1960, please remember, in 1960, lasers were invented. So prior to 1960, we didn't have a very good coherent source of light and very intense source of light. So prior to that, what all experiments were done, people did not use lasers. But seeing this impact, it became very easy once we used the laser light beam, where you can enhance the power density. And these are the crystals like lithium niobate, barium titanate, and so on, lithium titanate. So these are the materials you can use it for, they are used as the photorefractive effect or photorefractive crystals. Nowadays, people use photorefractive polymer also because they do have same properties and they are cheaper as compared to this photorefractive crystals. And you can, as a material scientist, you can generate these kinds of crystals because these crystals are in high demand. And in India, I think there is only one university in Anna University. I think they produce these materials. Otherwise, for these materials, we have to import. Most of the imports are done from China. And that is why it is very costly again. So what is the simple model to understand this photorefractive effect? I hope I'm audible. Any problem here? You may ask.
Yes, you are audible. You are audible, Dr.
Yes,
Naveen.
So what I was telling that people may ask questions in between also, one small questions, otherwise I will take questions at the end.
Okay.
So what is the simple model to understand the photorefractive effect? It happens that there are impurities with different energy levels around the middle of the band gap, what we call as the donors. So with enough photon energy, that is why we keep on saying that you have to apply high intense light beam. So with enough photon energy, electrons get excited. And once the electrons are excited, then they will migrate. So that is why this has the photocurrent. And that gives rise to change in the refractive index. And those change in the refractive index gives rise to this photorefractive effect. So an effect, how to be defined? It is an effect in certain crystals and other materials that respond to light by changing their refractive index. So what are the basic steps? We will have interference of coherent beams, formation of electric field by excitation and migration of electrons, electro-optic effect to modulate refractive index. Refractive index modulation will occur through electro-optic effect, and then there will be recovery of beams. These are the 4 basic steps. I'll show through diagram also. So the first step is the interference of coherent beams. As we know that when we record any interference pattern, you have bright dark fringe pattern. So when there is bright fringe, it means it has more higher intensity. When it is dark fringe, it means it has very less intensity. So according to the fringe pattern, bright dark pattern, there are different intensity patterns on this, what you are going to illuminate to these kinds of crystal. So there will be more light, bright corresponding to the bright fringe, and no light corresponding to the dark fringe. And there is a very good statement I always quote in my class to the students, that interference is a very interesting phenomena where we have a statement, we say light added to light gives darkness. It doesn't happen anywhere else. When you are adding light from 2 light sources, and as a result, in the output, you see a darkness, which otherwise is not possible. When you are adding 2 light, why should there be a dark place? Darkness should be there. And those things, bright and dark things, comes here as a benefit, because when there is more brightness, more intensity, more generation of electrons. Darkness, no generation of electrons, and that gives rise to this property. I've quoted a few references also, so that will help you if you wish to read more on this topic. I do not know if somebody is working or have worked on this material. So this is what the first step is, that you have the light beam, light from 2 coherent sources are incident on a photosensitive medium, then interference pattern is going to form. So you have this interference pattern. once you have this interference pattern, then corresponding to the bright and dark fringes, you have positive and negative charges production. So in bright regions, electrons are excited to the conduction band. And when they are excited, they migrate due to diffusion and photovoltaic effect to dark regions. So from bright regions, the electrons will migrate to dark regions. And for this, due to this effect, there is a space charge field which is formed in this process. And this is what is shown in this figure. And now comes to the effect of the electro-optic effect. So due to the Pocel's effect, one of the electro-optic effect, refractive index of the material is modulated according to the intensity of the electric field. Because intensity will be high, low. Accordingly, there will be changes in the refractive index. So thus, especially a varying refractive index grating is formed. So now what happens? Corresponding to bright, dark fringe pattern, there will be varying refractive index grating. So there will be change in refractive index, then no change, then again change, then no change. And this is uniform because you have the uniform interference pattern. And this is what it gives you this important feature. This is the band transport model of the photorefractivity. I think I should not discuss it. You all know and are aware of this impact. So this photorefractive crystal is regarded as a slab of material that contains one type of mobile carriers, electrons, and two types of impurities, donors and acceptors, which reside somewhere deep in the forbidden gap. So some of the donor atoms and all the acceptor atoms are assumed to be ionized. These are the variables we use in this effect. So small n is the density of electrons, capital N is the density of donors, then density of ionized donors, density of ionized acceptors. So photorefractive crystal is photoconductive. So input light will result into excitation of pairs of electrons and ionized donors, their density being proportional to the intensity. Corresponding to the intensity, this variation will take place. And electrons are mobile, hence they will diffuse from higher to lower density and the light and dark fringe pattern. Ionized donors cannot move. Consequently, there will be a violation of charge neutrality. And due to that effect, there will be an appearance of the electric field. So, but crystal is electro-optic. Electro-optic means there will be change in the refractive index due to the applied electric field, which means that an electric field will cause a small change in dielectric constant. Thus, impressed periodic interference pattern will lead to a dielectric constant which varies with the same period. So, which varies with the same period because the fringe pattern has the same periodicity. Same periodicity is being transferred on this material. So, this is the response of a material to the light. So all the 5 steps, what I just said, that you have this electric field, the net charge density, diffusion current, then charge density, then intensity. All these 5 steps are shown here in this plot. But all I have been saying, the same thing has been added here. Now here it comes that when we have corresponding changes in the refractive index, so in a way, there is a formation of grating inside the material. And these are the gratings. These are nothing but simply the fringe pattern, the reflections of the fringe pattern. In a way, you can say, as you have the fringe pattern, bright dark fringe pattern, accordingly we have change in refractive index, no change, change in refractive index, no change, and it happens periodically, so it takes the shape of a grating. And this is what the grating formation takes place into this material. And as you know, the holography is a concept which is purely based on interference, where we interfere two light beams and we record the interference pattern. Here also we are simply recording the interference pattern. And that interference pattern is in the form of the grating, and that grating formation is taking place due to the creation of the change in the refractive index. I hope this would be clear to everyone. So diffraction gratings. Now we know there are many types of gratings that you must be teaching to your students. The gratings are of different types. And ND sin theta is equal to 2 and 2D sin theta is equal to n lambda, we always write. So any periodic structure acts as a diffraction grating. So up to quite recently, these gratings were produced mechanically by ruling grooves on a surface. And that is why we, when we do solve any problem, we write that there are 10,000 lines in 1 inch. The gratings, if you buy from a local market, you will say that how many lines have been drawn, it will mention. So 10,000 lines in 1 inch, 20,000 lines in 1 inch. Now there is a restriction that how much close you can draw those lines. So it became a challenging task for the manufacturers to create a grating for which has very large number of lines within a specified region. So people started thinking of an alternative technique, how we can produce this such gratings. So holographic variety is a very important tool and very relevant here, and very important, because through holography you can create the fringe pattern, and those fringe pattern we can simply put it on some material, and that will simply work as a grating, because it is also a grating. Fringe pattern, bright dark patterns, and it has periodicity, and you can create as fine as possible. And that is why through in holographic process you can create very, very good quality gratings. Why I'm discussing these gratings here? Because in this photorefractive crystal also such gratings are formed. So when we talk of holographic grating, these are of two types. One grating is called thin grating. Another grating we call it as the thick or the volume grating. So thin gratings, how do we produce? So thin gratings are produced by exposing and etching a photoresist, and aim is here surface modulation. Like you record on the holographic plate and simply do the etching, etch the photoresist, and you have this grating ready to you. So these are thin gratings. But when we are forming gratings in a photorefractive crystal, this is not like that thin gratings. These gratings are thick gratings or volume gratings. So they represent a periodic variation in some property of a chunk of material. Most often it is the dielectric constant which undergoes periodic variation. So the grating formation which takes place in a photorefractive material, it is a kind of thick or volume grating. So when you have a grating represents a periodic media. So a periodic media can be created using the photorefractive effect. So many important phenomena involve a scattering of light from gratings or holograms. So when you have a grating, then you will have the diffraction pattern also occurring there. So you can create this as a wave mixing, phase conjugation, dynamic holography, everything you can do in this periodic media. So what happens in the waves in periodic media? So grating where dielectric constant is a periodic function of position. So in this case, this volume grating or thick grating which I am mentioning, in this case, dielectric constant is a periodic function of position. According to the position, this is changing. So this is a diffraction from a thin grating, but in thick grating, you have that change. Photorefractive gratings are basically, in this case, we have two types of gratings. One we call as the dynamic grating, another one we call as the static gratings. So what is dynamic gratings? Dynamic, as the name suggests, it means characteristics of the grating may vary as a function of time. If it is changing, the property is changing as a function of time, then it is dynamic. So diffracted light will actually affect the properties of the grating. But in a static grating, it is independent of input light. They are linear and their properties are not a function of time. So that we call as the static grating. So a grating which is there forever. But in dynamic grating, no, it will not be there forever. It will change as per the passage of the time. It is a function of time. So a static volume gratings. So static volume gratings, it consists of a slab of material in which a relative dielectric constant varies as a function of Z. And this is what the grating spacing you have. We define it as 2 pi by K. K is the spatial frequency of variation. It is related to the spatial period or grating spacing. The moment we go to we talk in the Fourier transform domain. So dielectric gratings should be able to diffract an incident wave. This is what is important. So considering that incident wave satisfies the condition for cumulative interactions, and this will be done only when we have this Bragg condition. So Bragg diffraction condition basically, that you are well aware of. So here, what you can see here, that the optical beam is incident on a material with a periodic variation of dielectric constant, what happens in the photorefractive effect. And second figure, figure B, shows that the dielectric grating of wave vector K will diffract incident beam of wave vector K1 in direction K2, such that the Bragg condition is satisfied. Many cases, Bragg condition may not be satisfied. This we will see. Accordingly, it has different uses. When it is satisfied, when it is not satisfied. So presenting Bragg condition in the form of a vector triangle, this is what we have done here. So two vectors are written. One is K1. You can write as the K1 is a function of K, Ix cos theta plus Iz sin theta. K2 is K, Ix cos theta minus Iz sin theta. So Bragg condition, what we write as the K1 minus K2 is equal to capital K. And where the periodicity is lambda by 2 sin theta. So if Bragg condition is not satisfied, the diffracted rays are not in phase and diffraction efficiency is bound to decline. So what is going to happen in this case? When Bragg condition is not satisfied, means the diffraction efficiency is going to decline. Maybe many of you may not be clear on the understanding of the diffraction efficiency, that how do we define this term diffraction efficiency. So diffraction efficiency is basically diffracted output divided by the input. So when you are shining some intensity I, how much percentage is the diffracted, and how with respect to the input beam, this is what is the diffraction efficiency. So what we want maximum to be diffracted. And in this case, if it is Bragg condition is not satisfied, then you will not get maximum diffraction. It means if it is not maximum diffraction, then some of the energy is going to be either absorbed in the material or it will go in some other region, some other zone. That will create a loss to the system. So now coming back to some of the applications where we can utilize these concepts, what all I have talked about. That through this, after illuminating the material, this photorefractive material with light, you generate the change in the refractive index that creates a kind of grating pattern, and then you can see this diffraction effect, and we want maximum diffraction effect for recovery of the information. So one of the examples or one of the applications is two-wave mixing. It means complex amplitudes of electric fields of two beams interfering within photorefractive crystal. So when two light beams are interfering within this crystal, then you have to study coupled equations, because this whole photorefractive effect, there are many books on this topic, and involves lots of mathematics. So I have not included those mathematical part, because like in writing these coupled wave equations and all so on, it will take a lot of time. So if somebody is interested, I have written the references, you can look into them, but it involves lots of mathematical things, steps. So two beams with same frequency create a stationary interference pattern. There will be energy coupling between two beams. And this coupling between two beams, it can be used for beam amplification. Like if you have a light beam whose intensity is poor, so we can create this two-wave mixing within this material. So what happens if you allow a pump beam? So the energy what you are pumping, this will be through this coupling process, the energy will be transferred from your pump beam into the weak beam, and the weak beam which comes out as a diffraction pattern, that will have enhanced energy. So this is a two-way mixing process through which we can create this beam amplification. In many cases, your light beam intensity is poor, so we can amplify those light beams. So it works like an amplifier. So it will amplify the energy of the input light beam. That you can do with the pump beam. So basically, through this two-way mixing, you pump energy, and that energy you are allowing to couple with that one. Okay, another one is the photorefractive resonators. As we know that we have to create this resonance effect for many applications. So you can create this resonator. So you have this kind of function here. Sorry. So here you have three mirrors, and you have a pump beam, and you have one beam. This light beam is going beyond this mirrors, and this creates a resonance, and that is done through this pump beam. So you will have this light beam coming out. That's the fourth beam. So this is the effect of a resonator. You can create this resonating effect. Again, it has different applications where you can utilize this. Another important application or property of this the field is it can be used in the phase conjugation. Like phase conjugation, as you know, that you have a function x plus iy. If you conjugate it, it becomes x minus iy. So that is easy to do in the mathematics, but how in actual case it will be done? So how the phase conjugation, the phase can be conjugated. You know, this mirror concept is very easy. That mirror will conjugate that effect. So that can be done with this through this photorefractive effect. Generation of a time reversed replica of a wave like a mirror. So you have this can be used for a lensless imaging, distortion correction. There are many cases, as you can see, that the system what you are using that may distort your wavefront. So those wavefronts, the distortions can be corrected because there will be only phase distortions. Dash distortions can be taken care through this phase conjugation. It is associated with a frequency shift. With nonlinear techniques, this can be done in real time also. So it is the phase conjugation can be achieved in real time. You don't have to wait for other time. So generation of phase conjugate waves. Now, how we can generate these phase conjugate waves? One of the techniques is 4-wave mixing. Degenerate 4-wave mixing, it is similar to holography. I'll explain that. And non-degenerate 4-wave mixing, which gives a large frequency shift. So what happens? Another process is stimulated scattering process. I wrote in the beginning as the motivation of the topic. You have Brillouin scattering that involves acoustic waves, small frequency shift, and Raman scattering that involves molecular vibration of optical phenomenons, larger shift. What are these? So degenerate 4-wave mixing. What happens? It's a 3rd order non-linear optical processes. It is like a 2-wave mixing. You are allowing 2 light beams to interfere, and the interference pattern is recorded in the crystal. You allow a 3rd beam, which is conjugate of the input beam. Then what happens? A 4th beam will be generated opposite to the 2nd beam. So that gives rise to 4-wave mixing. What happens in this case, that you have the induced grating by 2 input waves that scatters the 3rd wave and regenerates a 4th wave. Inputs are 2 anti-parallel high power pumps and a weaker probe wave. The output could be amplified besides conjugated. So the 4th beam can be amplified beam, can be phase conjugated beam. So it will give you both the benefits. I will show you one of the applications which I have personally worked, and I will show you some of those results also, this 4-wave mixing and its application. In conventional holography, gratings are recorded in a photographic emulsion. Like you all must have used at some part of time, earlier days, the analog camera. Then in those cameras, we used to take picture, and the picture is recorded on a photographic film. Once you consume all the films, then you take your camera to the photographer. He will develop and give you the negative. If you are satisfied with the quality, then you will ask him to make positives. This is what we used to do. So it is the film on which we used to record the images. In holography also, we use photographic emulsion. It is the same like the analog film. Brillouin and Raman and Brillouin processes. You know this mixing of mechanical oscillations with a light beam in non-linear media. This is what it's a new dimension, new research area, where you are mixing mechanical oscillations with a light beam, and that mixing can be done in the non-linear media. That gives rise to these processes. If you have the mechanical, in that case, the intraatomic distance in a molecular density in a solid or liquid. You have the frequency spectrum of light, which is modified while phonons are emitted or absorbed. So you have the photons and phonons combination or interaction of photons and phonons. In Brillouin scattering, there is a very recent paper on Brillouin scattering by Wolf in 2020-21. So I'll suggest, if somebody has interest, he should read this article. This Brillouin scattering is an important and interesting nonlinear effect that involves interaction between optical and acoustic fields in optical waveguides. Nowadays, these combined things are being worked for many applications. Electromagnetic waves are coherently coupled to an acoustic or mechanical wave in a light-bearing material. This light-bearing material means you have to use a non-linear material. So electromagnetic waves are coherently coupled to an acoustic or mechanical wave in a light-bearing material. What happens here? Because this happens, this you can do in the photorefractive material, change in refractive index will occur. So refractive index is a function of density. This is what we call as the device Sears effect. Acoustic wave scatters light with a Doppler shift. So acoustic wave is going to scatter the light beam with the Doppler shift. In turn, electronic polarization creates pressure variations. And light can pump a sound wave. And many applications you know. So this electronic polarization, when it creates a pressure of variations, then you know that there are many applications, many features which you can exploit. In this case, when light can pump a sound wave, then it is scattered back with slightly different frequency. It has many applications like sensing, filtering, lasing, acoustic storage of optical pulses. Many sensors have been made on this concept. So this is a very good research topic. One can pick up and do many interesting things with that. In Raman scattering, as is known to all, that intraatomic distance with molecule is changed when electron cloud is displaced. It involves vibration state of molecules. Here variables are microscopic, while in balloon scattering it is macroscopic. That's the difference between these two scattering. I think you people know more because these are more related to your materials part. So I'll talk about some other application now. As we talked, two-wave mixing, four-wave mixing, that give rise to many things, and you have many applications. Then another feature, another application is self-focusing. Self-focusing is a result of photorefractive effect in a non-linear optical medium. What happens? That in linear medium there is no photorefractive effect. Hence, there is no effect of a field or the intensity on the refractive index. This is what is the difference. So linear, no change of field on the refractive index. If there is change in refractive index due to field, that becomes non-linear medium. So in linear medium, you have narrow optical beams that propagate without affecting the properties of the medium. Optical waves tend to broaden with distance and naturally diffract. So if you have this figure should be known to many of you. When you have a light beam, if you have a Gaussian light beam and that propagates, that remains Gaussian, but there will be some spreading in that beam. But nature remains Gaussian. And that we always do this kind of mathematical illustration. I always ask in the Viva that name the function whose Fourier transform is same, is identical. And Gaussian becomes a very important function. That if you have a Gaussian function, calculate its Fourier transform, it becomes Gaussian. As many times you calculate its Fourier transform, it gives you the Gaussian. And the same thing is happening here, that if a Gaussian beam, you propagate further, it gives you the Gaussian beam. And that's the normal property that optically you can do the Fourier transform. The diffraction phenomena is nothing but in mathematics, what you do, the Fourier transformation is the same what you do in optics as the diffraction. So Fraunhofer diffraction pattern, what we call as the far field diffraction pattern, is nothing but the simply Fourier transform of that function. Like if you take a single slit diffraction pattern and the diffraction pattern looks like a sinc function sin x by x. So that's the relationship. So Fourier transform of the Gaussian is Gaussian. So what you can plot, it remains a Gaussian, but there will be a spread. This is the natural phenomena. Now, when the medium is non-linear, what is going to happen? So in photorefractive effect, presence of light modifies the refractive index via orientally enhanced birefringence to give a non-uniform refractive index change. So what is self-focusing? Self-focusing is this index change means delta n, how much refractive index is changing, is this index change acts like a lens to the light. So the change in refractive index, it acts like a lens. And what is the property of a lens? Lens will simply focus the light beam. So without using a lens, if you are using this material, this will simply focus that light beam. And that is why we call it as self-focusing. So when self-focusing exactly compensates for the diffraction of the beam, we get a soliton. And these solitons we study a lot in fiber optics. So when self-focusing exactly compensates for the diffraction of the beam, what we get is the soliton. This is what is the impact here. You have a spatial soliton. And you can see here that it is simply the light beam is being focused. And this diffraction has been compensated exactly. Diffraction still occurs, but that diffraction has been compensated. That we call as the soliton. What you get is the focused light beam. So these photorefractive crystals are used as a self-focusing material. And this effect is the self-focusing effect. So I hope I am able to convey my message and people are connected. I hope I am audible also. Because I do not get any response in between, so I get confused. Are we connected or not?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Oh, very good. So I keep on checking in between that I'm simply speaking or somebody is listening or not. Okay, thank you. So recovery of light beams. This is one of the aspects that connects the optics to this photorefractive effect. The modulated refractive index pattern can diffract light that we have seen, that the refractive change in refractive index, it creates a periodic grating within the material. And when you are shining light on that grating, on that material, then because of this grating formation, the diffraction is going to take place. So diffraction pattern is the original pattern of light used for the creation of the interference pattern. Illuminating the grating with one of the two used beams will yield the other. This is how we can recover the light beam. What light beam you have used for creating the grating, if you shine the grating, you should be able to recover the same light beam. Now, why it is important? That's why do we want to reproduce that original light beam? Because if you are playing with some information, if you are encoding some information, then you should be able to retrieve that information also. So it has wonderful applications in information encoding, in data encoding. You can encode that information within that material, and at any point of time, whenever you want, you can recover that information without any loss. So if there is no loss, means you should have diffraction efficiency 100%. So you have to create very good kind of grating within the material so that you are able to achieve high diffraction efficiency. High diffraction efficiency means no loss of information. And that is why this becomes important. It's a photosensitive material. I keep on saying that several types of crystals can be used. Presence of impurities leads to photorefractive medium. You know that this impurities create lots of problems, and this impurity has also given us some benefit, and photorefractive effect is one of them. So iron doped lithium niobate has been extensively studied. Many crystals are doped with other crystals to create these kinds of photorefractive materials. Now, as I said, that this grating formation which takes place in the material, this can be dynamic grating or static grating. Static grating means once you have created the grating, it will remain there. Dynamic grating means it is a function of time. So if you are creating some grating pattern in the photoeffective crystal, what happens? They may not be there for all the time. So what happens that you have to fix those gratings within the crystal. So there are many techniques how to do that fixing. That is why this fixing becomes important. So a space charge field does not remain permanently since the electrons migrate back due to dark conductivity. So in case of lithium niobate, the grating can remain a few years. So what happens that crystal has to be heated to a certain temperature to fix it, depending on its chemical properties. So when you buy those crystals, they will tell you the basic properties of those crystals and how to fix the grating. Like in case of lithium niobate, it is to be heated at 150 degrees centigrade. How long it should be treated, how long it should be heated, that all depends on the manufacturer will provide you that data. How much impurities has been used and with other properties of this crystal. Accordingly, these are changed. So another application is holographic data storage. And this holographic data storage becomes very important, that in this case, you have to recover that information. So storage of binary information in 3-dimensional volume. So holography has the benefit that holography gives you 3D imaging. Hence, you can create 3-dimensional imaging through holography. Because in holography, what we capture is the phase information, and that helps you retrieve the 3rd-dimensional information. So you can record that material, that information in a crystal as a data storage. Lasers, mostly 500 nanometer wavelengths are used. Uses a reference beam and a signal beam, which contains the information. Reference beam can be used later to read the information from the material. You can convert the signal beam. You can use a spatial light modulator. It is an interfacing device which connects to the electrical domain to the optical domain. From the electronic data, you can use a CCD camera. I'll show you that figure. So this is the recording process, holographic recording. So you have a beam from here. That light beam and here we have displayed a spatial light modulator. On this and grating in terms of change in refractive index. So that we have stored within this crystal. Once we have stored within this crystal, then at any point of time, you can use only the reference beam, and because the grating is stored in this crystal, so that will diffract the light, and the diffracted light will take this, follow this path, and you will be able to reproduce that. That will be reproduced there or retrieve that information. So this is a process how we can holographically store information in this material. And that gives rise to a new dimension. We call it as the holographic data storage, in which you can store very, very large amount of data in this crystal. And based on that concept, it was reported, it has been reported in the literature that within a crystal of dimension 1 millimeter cube, 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter by 1 millimeter, you can store 10,000 holographic data, 10,000 pages within that material. Now, with the help of this concept, now there are many things what you can combine. We call different types of multiplexing techniques. You can do a spatial multiplexing. You can do polarization multiplexing. You can do wavelength multiplexing. And with those multiplexing, a large amount of information can be stored in this material. So there are a few companies which are still working on this holographic data storage. They wanted to bring out holographic disk. So like the disk, what normally we use, we have different types of disk, like CD, what we use in our normal laptops and PCs, that has the storage capacity of 700 megabyte. If you use a DVD, that has the 4.5 GB storage capacity. We have Blu-ray disc that has 25 GB GB storage capacity. We have a dual Blu-ray disc that has 50 GB storage capacity. That's the limitation of a disc. But in holographic disc, you have the storage capacity of 1000 GB. 1000 GB, like an external hard disk, you can store 1000 GB of information in one CD. That is there. And Sony, a company from Japan, was working for the NASA, because NASA has generates every day a huge amount of information, huge amount of images and data. They have to store them. So they gave this project to Sony for developing this holographic CD, and probably the NASA is using that. But for that holographic CD, you cannot use in this normal PC, normal computer. You have to have a different kind of system. That system was costly. That is why it was not launched in the market. So this is one of the applications, and very important application. The different types of multiplexing you can do: storing multiple holograms in the same region, angular rotating the storage material. You can rotate the material and still store, like you rotate every 1 degree or 0.1 degree, and you can keep on for 360 degree, you rotate and record the information. You can do the spatial, move that orientation of the beam and still do the recording. You can use different wavelengths for the recording. And these are the multiplexing techniques through which a large amount of data can be stored and retrieved. It has been used in pattern recognition also, that you have stored a large information of data and you can simply do the pattern matching, like fingerprint matching or anything. So this is how the reading data comes. So in reading data, you don't have to use this object beam. You are using the same reference beam, and it has been stored in this material. And what you will see, the array of information, array of holograms that will be as a diffraction pattern, you will be able to note that. So this is how you can record and read the info data in this photorefractive material and photorefractive medium. Diffraction pattern in a barium titanate, this is how the diffraction pattern will look like. So some of the photographs which I'm showing here. Then photorefractive microscope. This concept and this crystal can be used for the microscope. And as I said in the beginning, that it has a property that it can give you non-aberrated imaging also. And that is why this is a crucial thing and very important. Light propagation in photorefractive polymers. Polymers are cheaper as compared to these crystals. So this, and the concept remains same, that how information can be encoded and stored. The CDs, holographic CDs, what I'm talking about, they used this polymers only. I said in the beginning that in two-way mixing, you can do it for the image amplification. So this photorefractive effect can be used for as a two-way mixing for amplifying the input beam. So here the non-local nature of the photorefractive response leads to this amplification. Image of a test chart is amplified 10 times by passes through a crystal of lithium niobate. Simply you allow the light beam to pass through it, and it will give you 10 times higher magnification, higher amplification. This is how it is done. So you have this input light beam, here's the crystal, and you have a pump beam. So this beam might have very less intensity, very less energy, but the moment you pump this beam, what you get is the amplified output image. So image amplification is done with this one. Phenomenon of energy is transfer in two-way mixing in nonlinear optical media for coherent amplification of images. The same way two-way mixing, you can do it for different orientations, different angular things. Okay, the last part of this presentation or this application is on security. This is my research topic, so I thought I'll discuss it. And again, based on this, one of the applications of the photorefractive effect. So in encryption, what do we mean by this term encryption? In an encryption system, we wish to encode information or data in such a way that only application of the correct key will reveal the original information. If you are not using the correct key, you will not be able to retrieve that information. And security of the traditional methods is being enhanced by using more powerful algorithms, and what is needed that you have to enhance this key size. So key lengths are chosen such that even computers with the best cipher cracking algorithms would require unreasonable amount of time. Digital techniques are falling short of expectation because when you enhance the key size, means processing time will be very large. So we have to look for alternative technique where we can use another technique where we are not compromising with the security and achieving high accuracy and better quality. So we have optical technique for that purpose. Optics has several features what can be combined or what can be utilized or exploited for this feature. Like optics does parallel processing. Digital processing is basically one-dimensional. Optical processing is basically two-dimensional. It offers difficulty of unauthorized access, like copying. It has high space bandwidth product, possibility of including biometrics such as fingerprints, iris, everything you can include, face. It has different degrees of freedom, like you can utilize different phase information, wavelength, polarization, spatial frequency, orbital angular momentum. These are the encoding parameters, and you can play around with these parameters and make the system very stronger. It is suitable for processing two-dimensional data images and of course suitable for holographic memories. And when we talk of holographic memories, means we can use in photorefractive crystal or photorefractive material and store that. I have talked about the storage. Now you can talk about secure storage. Like you have secured that information and that has been stored there. So it is a secure storage. And retrieval is perfect in all the cases. So this is the basic technique for optical security, that you have an input information, that you place a random phase mask attached to it and illuminate with the coherent beam of light. You have a lens here that will give you the Fourier transformation of that input function. Then in the Fourier plane, you have another random phase mask. Take one more Fourier transformation, it gives you the, as you know, that taking two Fourier transformation brings you to the image plane. And this is what the image, what you are going to get. But this image, we call it as the encrypted image. Now for the decryption or for retrieving, you have to reverse the whole process. So what is the solution? What is the optical solution for this, and where this photorefractive effect is coming into picture? So this is what it is. The same process, you have this input function, input image multiplied with a random phase mask. Take its Fourier transform, where you land in the Fourier domain, place another random phase mask, take one more Fourier transform. What you get is the encrypted image. that encrypted image here is in the like an optical beam and object beam. So that object beam reaches to this crystal. This is a photorefractive crystal here. You can use any crystal, barium titanate, lithium niobate, any crystal, or any polymer, photodifractive polymer. And what you do, you have this input light here, and that light you have separated, and there is another reference beam. At some particular angle, we are allowing this reference beam to interfere with this object beam. Here also you can record a large number of holograms or in this interference patterns at different angles. You can change this angle between these two beams, and you can keep on recording different information. So once you have recorded, means hologram has been recorded here. This hologram has been recorded, it is in the terms of the grating. Now use a conjugate beam. The same light beam, what source what I am using, one of the beams has been separated here, and that beam is used, which is exactly opposite to the reference beam. They are exactly at 180 degree. This you have to make sure while performing the experiment. So once you're using that beam, this is the readout beam we call. So this is the third beam. So as we know, we have just talked about phase conjugation or four-wave mixing. That concept is coming here, but it gives you, it will generate a fourth beam because of the four-wave mixing process. So two beams are being interfering, and the third beam is illuminating that grating pattern that generates the fourth beam. That fourth beam, what it generates, it is coming out. Now, the fourth beam, what is being generated, it is a conjugate beam. So what we know, what we have seen here in this case for encryption and decryption, that for decryption, you have to use the same phase mask. This is a random phase mask. Mathematical representation for this phase mask is simply exponential minus j 2 pi omega something that you can create. Now you have to use the conjugate of that. So when you are using for encryption, you are using a random function. But in another case, you have to use conjugate of that phase mask. That conjugate of the phase mask you have to create. Now there is a very great problem. Now they created a big problem, that how we can create the conjugate of the phase mask. I hope I am connected. You are able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So here in this case, the fourth beam, what is coming out due to the four-wave mixing, that is a phase conjugate beam. Means it's a phase conjugate image. Whatever encrypted image was there, it is conjugate of that encrypted image. So doing this process, it helps us retrieve the data very effortlessly. Now you do not have to use conjugate of the keys. Because of this phase conjugation, we have conjugated the encrypted image. So use the same keys. So all the exponential terms will be cancelled, and what you get is the original information. This is what is the called double random phase encoding using photorefractive effect. And here is the utility of the photorefractive crystal to be used as a recording media. Now you can store large number of information within one crystal, within one material. And all the information is encoded and secure. If you have the correct key, then you will be able to decode it correctly. So I'll talk about one of the results here. This is what we have. So you can see, look at this figure. You have this laser light here, and you have to create this kind of geometry. So one beam is coming here, and that beam is information is displayed on this SLM1, what you want to encrypt. And this is the reference beam what we have. Once you have this, and the same original beam has been created, divided here with the help of mirror, we have brought it here. So these two beams are interfering, and the interference pattern has been recorded inside this crystal. The third beam, what I am using here, that is coming from this arm, and which is conjugate, which is just opposite to this reference beam. So what happens due to this conjugate coupling equation, the fourth beam, what will come out, it will be conjugate to this, and it will follow this path. Following this path means all the random phases what was introduced during encryption process, during decryption, they are getting cancelled, and what you get here is the original information back. So these are the results. So this is the input image, this is the encrypted image. So this is the original image, this is the encrypted image, this is the decrypted image. These are the phase contrast we have used. I'll talk about that you can create a phase contrast image also with the help of a photodifractive crystal. Phase contrast image means if you have a phase image that you can convert into an amplitude image or intensity image through a photodifractive crystal. Some more result, and then in this regard, there is another important thing that to discuss about the fractional Fourier transform. But maybe due to the paucity of the time, I will not discuss that fractional Fourier transform. It is a generalization of the ordinary Fourier transform. I'll skip this part because I have also used this concept and combined with the photorefractive case here. And this case, the distance between the lens and the imaging mirror, that the spacing is changed. So if it is exactly at focal plane, we call it as the Fourier transform. If it is not exactly at the focal plane, what we get is the fractional Fourier transform. This is what the concept has been utilized here. And these are some of those experimental results. So to conclude, I have almost taken 2 minutes extra. So to conclude, I have discussed the photorefractive effect and the nonlinear optics, basics basically, and some of the applications of the photorefractive effect in 4-wave mixing, in phase conjugation, security, data storage, self-focusing, and so on and so forth. I must acknowledge my PhD students for this some of the work which I am currently doing. These are some of these students. Fortunately, all of these students which are shown in this picture, they have completed their PhD. Maybe some of them are from the, I think one, Ariba was a student from Patna University. She is currently doing postdoc in UK. Other student, Alok, has already gone to US. And the third student has got the JSPS fellowship, who is going to Japan. Fourth student's thesis is under review, under evaluation. So those people who are more interested on the cryptography or optical crypto systems, recently I have written a monograph, the optical crypto system. It was published from IOP, Institute of Physics publications. It is available in e-copy as well as the hard copy. If somebody has interest, you can write to me. I can share you a soft copy of this book free of cost. So thank you very much for your kind attention. Now feel free to ask me any question because you have not asked any question in between. So now you can ask me any question related to this. I will try my best to answer your query. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Naveen. Now I would like, Sonu Kumar. I'm unmuting you, then you can ask your question. Yes, Sonu? Sonu? One moment. Let me unmute you.
Yes, sir. Hello, sir.
Yes.
Actually, there is one question regarding with photorefractive crystal. You told
You are not audible. Sonu, you are not audible. You can write your question in the chat box.